Hello again, everyone. I'm back for my Week 1 progress report for learning Classical Nahuatl, and in the past week, I have been through the entirety of this book. Now, I picked up this book, it must have been in December. Now, this book is definitely for the layperson. It is very user-friendly, and it uses very simple language to express some of the grammatical terms. In a sense, I feel like I was already beyond this before I started, but I still found it useful, just as a refresher for a lot of these concepts, and also because this book is absolutely packed to the gills with exercises, just pages and pages of exercises. Now, normally, I hate exercises, and I don't do them in any language learning books. I find them to be just horrendously boring and a waste of time. But in this case, I'm relying on exercises for a couple of reasons. The thing is, I'm not really learning Classical Nahuatl the way I would normally learn a language. The way I normally like to learn a language is just by exposure. I like to buy texts in the language, preferably with audio, and go through it and essentially just translate it. Things like that, just exposing myself to these patterns over time to let them sink in passively rather than actively trying to nail anything down, which just to me feels incredibly boring, and I'm not particularly motivated to do that, and motivation is the most important factor, etc., etc. When I'm learning a new language, I typically focus on listening comprehension, which I feel is simultaneously one of the most important and one of the hardest skills to hone. If you have sufficient listening comprehension, then you can, listen to audio without the text, which means you can do that while doing other activities. It allows for, passive absorption of all this information. It's very useful. But since no one actually speaks Classical Nahuatl, I'm aware there are a bunch of regional varieties. In fact, this book actually talks a lot about many different varieties, such as the Huasteca and the Central varieties, which was actually quite interesting. I don't really see very much point in learning Nahuatl to a conversational level. That's not really where I'm putting my effort to in this instance. What I'd prefer to focus on is more reading comprehension, being able to look at a word and break it down into its components just by seeing it. And in so doing, I kind of need all the help that I can get. So these exercises do actually help me just ingrain the sense of where the conjugation prefixes are and how to deconstruct those and the order that the prefixes come in, things like that. I did say in the last one that I didn't have any goals for this 12-week period, but I think if I have just one goal, it would be to get to the point where conjugating a verb, applying the correct prefixes, and looking at a word and figuring out which prefixes it has and what they mean is essentially automatic. So, over the course of this coming week, I plan to return to this book, and as I said in the last one, I have already read through this book once from cover to cover, and it's essentially just like a reference grammar, but it is intended for someone who's learning the language. It's just a lot less user-friendly than this one, but that's fine. I think I'm more than ready for that. And this book also has lots of, not exercises per se, but examples. This book also dives much more thoroughly, as you could probably guess, into some of the more nitty-gritty particular aspects of the grammar and which form is used, etc., which I'd really like to get a good grasp on that as well. And then, hopefully, once I get through this again, I can look at some actual texts and start trying to deconstruct them and break them down and translate them, which I think is really what's going to push the fluency level up. So that was week 1, and I feel like it's going pretty well so far, pretty manageable. So check back next week for my week 2 progress report, and we'll see how going through this book goes. So I will see you then. Thanks very much for watching.